At a class reunion, the college freshman Carol drew the adventure card in the Truth or Dare game. Choose one of the men present and kiss him for 3 minutes. In the next second, her gaze fell directly on Dean Hackett beside me. Carol timidly asked me, "Ethel, can I borrow Dean for 3 minutes?" The air became still as if everyone was holding their breath, while Dean just lowered his eyes, playing with the palm of my hand. I frowned and asked Carol, "There are so many single guys here, why don't you ask someone else?" She was speechless, biting her lip with an embarrassed look. Dean, who had been casually beside me, finally dropped the act. He released my hand and stood up. I quickly grabbed his sleeve. Dean turned to look at me. Seeing my eyes filled with mist, he squatted in front of me. "Good girl." He gently wiped the corner of my eye with his hand. "If it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to watch, just wait a few minutes." I held onto his arm, unwilling to let go. Dean pried open my fingers one by one. Standing up, he looked down at me. "Don't be so childish, Ethel." Caught off guard by his cold gaze, I was momentarily stunned. Dean's friend couldn't bear it and advised me, "Ethel, don't be such a spoilsport. Why bother coming to the party if you can't handle it?" Before I could respond, Marin, who had been silent in the corner of the private room, suddenly chuckled. All eyes instantly turned to him. He leisurely took out a lollipop, saying, "If you can handle it, why don't you go and kiss every guy here?" The blushing girl in the crowd was taken aback, and Wayne, noticing her silence, leaned back on the sofa. With a faint sneer, he returned her words, "Spoilsport." I looked at him in astonishment, never expecting him, as Dean's friend, to speak up for me. It wasn't until Dean and Carol finished their 3-minute kiss that I finally regained my senses. Just as Dean sat back down beside me, I immediately blocked him on my phone. Dean laughed absurdly, a hint of anger in his confusion. "It's just a game, why are you making such a fuss?" As soon as he finished speaking, the noise from the crowd suddenly escalated. It was Wayne who drew the most exciting dare. Take a girl from the scene and spend the night with her. A guy with a suggestive smile added, "It refers to a hot, passionate night." Someone who knew Wayne stepped in to defuse the situation. "My bro Wayne is a man of virtue, so let's just give him a drink as punishment and call it a day." "Hold on." Wayne suddenly spoke up. He calmly walked over to me, extending his hand towards me. When he smiled, it was as if he could charm anyone. "Would you like to try it with me tonight?" Dean squinted his eyes and assessed Wayne, and jokingly reminded, "Wayne, she's my girlfriend." Wayne casually glanced at him. "It's just a game, Dean. Don't take it so seriously." Dean seemed indifferent. "It's because my girlfriend is conservative, she would never agree to you. I'm just rejecting on her behalf." But in the next second, I placed my hand in Wayne's palm. "Yes, Dean." Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Dean's smile froze on his face. I thought of the malice in their tone every time they called me a good girl after entering college. As if they were looking at a ridiculous person. Alcohol fueled my rebellious mentality. So I impulsively agreed to him. Wayne looked at me as I held his hand, raising an eyebrow slightly. He pulled me up and walked towards the door. There were constant exclamations behind us. "What the hell? That's still Wayne Marin, right? Did I mistake someone for being drunk?" Dean's voice was the most obvious among them. "Stop." He was still sitting in the private room. The way he looked at me was like looking at an unreasonable child. His tone was casual. "I just wanted to say." He laughed, "Let me know which hotel you're staying at, I'll send you a condom." I quickly spoke up before Wayne, smiling brightly. "No need. Are you so lacking in self-respect that you have to worry about your ex-girlfriend booking a room with another man?" I looked at him with pity, rejecting him not so tactfully. "Sorry, but I'm not fond of people without self-respect." Before Dean could react angrily, I grabbed Wayne's arm and left the room. It wasn't until I sat in Wayne's car that I finally breathed a sigh of relief. All the frustration disappeared. I politely thanked Wayne Marin. "Thank you, Wayne, for helping me out today. Just drop me off at the subway station up ahead." I naturally didn't take that adventure seriously, and Wayne probably thought the same. He controlled the steering wheel with one hand, his voice lazy. "Do you know the consequences of lying to them?" I shook my head, but I didn't really care. Sometimes, before playing Truth or Dare, we would agree that if someone lied, they would be single for the rest of their life or something like that. But I didn't believe in those things. I took out my phone and looked at what was said in the group chat. Let's play an exciting game of truth or dare tonight. Whoever lies will be poor for the rest of their life, deeply in debt, and unable to get rich again. My pupils trembled. I read those few sentences over and over again. No, I really believe in this. While I was still in a panic, Wayne had already parked the car at the subway entrance. He leaned towards the door, raising his chin with a smile that seemed like a smirk. Get off, it's just being poor for the rest of your life, it's not a big deal. No, this is very important. I immediately shook my head, tightly gripping the door handle. Wayne seemed to have misunderstood. Can't open the door? He leaned over and his hand rested on the door handle. Without hesitation, I pressed down on Wayne's hand, stopping him from opening the door. His other hand supported the edge of my seat, his body suspended above me. He silently trapped me in the confined space. Wayne lowered his eyes. What do you mean by this? A bundle of ropes spun rapidly in my mind. I blinked and blurted out, I want to sleep with you. Wayne's gaze remained unchanged as he retreated to the driver's seat. He absent-mindedly tugged at his lip. But I don't want to. The atmosphere instantly turned icy. I mentally collapsed at least 3 times before slowly nodding. I didn't let my voice sound trembling. Sorry. I think I've had too much to drink. I offended you. I lowered my head and said goodbye in a soft voice. Well, I'll leave then. Wayne's fingertip moved and locked the car door. He started the car without saying a word. I looked back. The profile of the man seemed colder than before. I guessed he was angry about my previous overstep, so I endured my embarrassment and tentatively apologized again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it. I really have no feelings for you. I sat restlessly in the passenger seat, my head lowered like an elementary school student who made a mistake. My voice was almost murmuring. I don't want to sleep with you. No one responded. The atmosphere inside the car completely chilled. I noticed that the speed of the car was getting faster and faster. Why was Wayne even angrier now? Under my trembling and rich psychological activities, Wayne stopped in front of a bar. He looked into my puzzled eyes. Resting his forearm on the steering wheel, he glanced at me casually and explained, Don't forget, we're supposed to be together tonight. Yes. As long as we stay in the same space, it doesn't count as breaking the rules even if we don't sleep together. Wayne really has a clean and well-developed mind. I immediately got out of the car and followed his footsteps. Wayne knew the owner here and disappeared after arranging a private room for me. My attention quickly shifted when I received a call from an unknown number. On the other end of the line, Carol and Dean were chatting. Dean, why don't you call Ethel? Aren't you worried that she might cheat on you? Dean found her words amusing. I don't know how conservative she is. She was just saying it in anger at me. There was a hint of confidence in the guy's voice. She must have already gone back to her dorm and slept by now. Carol giggled, but you seem so calm, it feels like you don't really care about your girlfriend. There was a few seconds of silence before he answered. I'm not that into her. I angrily hung up the phone, feeling a mix of embarrassment and anger at being exposed to the truth. Because I really was planning to go back to my dorm and sleep. My chest felt like it was blocked by a wet cotton ball, heavy and suffocating. Coincidentally, the cocktail I ordered was delivered. I grabbed it and took a sip, trying to extinguish this unnamed anger. The waiter looked at me speechlessly. Just as he turned to leave, he suddenly froze and turned back abruptly. God, you took the wrong drink. This one is specially made by our boss for himself. He shouted in panic, sounding like a boiling kettle. I reassured him, it's okay, I'll pay you the original price. The waiter ignored my words, threw down the tray, and ran in the direction where Wayne had just left. It didn't take long for me to understand why he was so panicked. There was something wrong with the drink. When Wayne appeared in front of me, my alertness dropped to 2%. Ethel, how are you feeling? The guy leaned down and placed his icy hand on the side of my face. It feels so cool. I leaned comfortably against him and rubbed against him. But the 2% of alertness made me remember his rejection towards me. Reluctantly, I pushed away his hand. I jumped off the chair and walked out. Where are you going? Wayne grabbed my arm and furrowed his brows tightly. After thinking for a moment, I instinctively replied, I think I need a man right now. Afraid of him misunderstanding, I reassured him seriously. But it won't be you. After all, he had helped me, it would be unethical to force anything on him. So, I emphasized my words, saying each one clearly. Don't worry, I won't look for you. Wayne's face turned ugly, beyond recognition. He let go of my hand and coldly retorted from a superior position. Is that so? Ethel, I hope you can keep your word. When I came to my senses again, I found myself being carried by Wayne into a hotel room upstairs. At the same time, my self-control dropped another level. I felt like I was trapped in a swamp in the tropical rainforest, restless and agitated. Wayne took off his shirt, leaving only a pair of gray drawstring sweatpants. He lazily leaned against the sofa, staring at me coldly. Come here. My gaze passed over the neatly arranged six-pack abs on his abdomen. And then it froze there, unable to move away. I obediently moved towards him. Wayne played with something that looked like a bottle of potion in his hand. With his captivating peach blossom eyes, he spoke in a tempting tone. As a favor for helping you today, can you help me apply some medicine? I nodded, feeling like a melting ice cream cone. Hot and powerless. But I still accepted this challenging task. Where does it hurt? Wayne grabbed my hot hand and placed it on one of his muscles. Here? I blinked quickly, changing the subject. Completely unaware that my face at this moment resembled a rotten peach. Wayne didn't respond, and he pulled my hand to another place. Does it hurt here too? He resumed his mischievous look, with a charming smile. As we continued to apply the medicine, I unconsciously sat on his lap. He used the same trick again, lifting my fingertips to his lips. Does it hurt here too? I stared straight at his thin lips. Wayne's voice was low and hoarse. You'll know if you give it a kiss. I wrapped my hands around his neck, unable to resist the temptation. I lightly kissed him. And then I quickly pulled away. Wayne placed both hands on my waist, looking down at me with warmth in his eyes. Why did you stop kissing? I felt a bit embarrassed and asked him. Can I kiss you again? After getting his permission, I kissed him again without any hesitation. Wayne firmly held the back of my head and took the lead. Without a doubt, he pried open my clenched teeth. When Wayne's hand reached under my clothes, my phone suddenly rang at an inappropriate time. Wayne held my face and continued to kiss my lips. He only stopped when he glanced at the caller ID on the phone. Then he moved back a little and answered the call. On the other end, Dean's voice was calm but urgent. Ethel, where are you right now? Your roommate told me you didn't return to the dorm. Who are you with? Wayne absent-mindedly pecked my lips, casually responding to Dean. Calling at this time, are you coming to deliver family planning supplies to us? I completely ignored Dean on the phone. I snuggled into Wayne's arms, chasing after his lips. I want more. Wayne smiled and pinched my chin, tilting his head. He dragged out the sound in a suggestive and low voice. I'll give you more later. Dean was unusually agitated. Wayne, you know how much I like Ethel. You shouldn't touch her like this, you are my friend. Wayne put the call on speakerphone and threw the phone aside. He held my hand and placed it on the drawstring of his pants, teaching me how to untie it. He agreed with Dean's words, quite affirmatively. It's not like that anymore. We're not friends anymore. I found Dean really annoying. Because he kept blabbering, Wayne didn't have time to kiss me. I snatched the phone and hung up, then turned it off. Wayne smiled knowingly, tilting his head slightly to avoid my nose and kissing me. I've heard countless times in college that Wayne Marin is a taciturn and indifferent person. But tonight, he's unusually talkative. Don't move, let me help you take it off. You look beautiful, Ethel, don't hide. He's so gentle, and his words of praise and encouragement sound particularly charming in his hoarse voice. Ethel, you're amazing. Open your eyes and look at yourself in the mirror, okay? How could it be? It's obviously sweet. I almost drowned in this sweet trap. Unconsciously, I did many embarrassing things that I wished I could bury my head in the ground when I woke up. The next day when I woke up, Wayne was already gone. He didn't leave a word. Obviously, he didn't want to have any relationship with me. What happened last night was just an accident. I sat up with the blanket, feeling a bit lonely as I expected. But when the warm sunlight shone on my shoulder with red marks, I quickly cheered up. I'll just consider it as taking advantage of a popular guy. I didn't have a blackout. So I wasn't surprised at all when I saw Dean downstairs in the dormitory building. Ethel. When Dean came up to me, his expression was not as furious as I had expected. His tone was even softer than usual. I deleted all of Carol's contact information, and I'll keep my distance from her in the future. If we broke up yesterday, can you pretend that nothing was said? I didn't know what expression to make to express my current shock and embarrassment. Compared to his behavior of kissing Carol and then dumping her, I couldn't understand why he immediately came to me seeking reconciliation when he clearly knew what happened between me and Wayne last night. I even suspected that he had a fetish for wearing a cuckold's hat. I paused for a moment and asked in a puzzled manner, "You don't mind what happened between me and Wayne last night?" He flicked my forehead with his hand and relaxed his expression. "Stop pretending, Ethel. I already know that nothing happened between you two last night." I was stunned. My first reaction was that Wayne must have told him. That makes sense. His sudden disappearance already indicated that he wanted to hide the fact that I slept with him. Dean wanted to hug me as he said that. "But you did deceive me. I was crazy looking for you all night. So let's call it even, okay?" I was annoyed and forcefully pushed Dean away. "I already said we broke up. Can you please stop bothering me? Stay away from me in the future." I was exhausted for over 3 hours last night. I went back to the dormitory and wrapped myself in a small blanket to continue sleeping. I was awakened by my roommate in the afternoon. "Ethel, there's a meeting for our club. The club president said he tried to call you but your phone was off, so he asked me to inform you." I sat up quietly. After a while, I yawned slowly, still feeling a bit sluggish. "Okay, thank you." Then, like a sloth, I slowly got out of bed, washed up, charged my phone, and left. By the time I arrived at the club classroom, I was completely refreshed. It wasn't time for the meeting yet, and no one, including Wayne, had arrived. A junior sister approached me hesitantly. Blushing, she tugged at my sleeve. "Ethel, do you know if Vice President Wayne Marin has a girlfriend? I want to pursue him." An inexplicable sense of shame rose in my heart. I didn't even know why I felt guilty. I shook my head at her and said, "I don't think he does." Her eyes lit up, and she asked eagerly, "Then, do you know anything about Wayne? Can you tell me something about him?" I shook my head more vigorously, trying to distance myself from him. "I'm not familiar with him. We haven't even had a proper conversation." The next second, a sneering laughter came from behind. "That's right. After all, I was the only one talking last night. All you said was and ah." Without turning around, I could already feel a chilling aura. Wayne was wearing a camouflage jacket today, with the zipper pulled all the way up, almost touching his chin. The all-black outfit added a touch of solemnity to his demeanor. He stood leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, a smile that wasn't quite a smile on his face. I was dragged by Wayne into another empty classroom. He lifted me up and placed me on the table, with his hands on both sides of me. He coldly stared at me. "I didn't expect you to be so despicable." I suddenly raised my head, and my lips almost touched his chin. Wayne clearly avoided the contact. "Who taught you that? After kissing and sleeping with someone, you think you can just walk away without taking responsibility?" Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I raised my face and confidently retorted, "I didn't want to kiss you. It was an accident." He sneered, "I advise you to think about it carefully." Without any reason, the scene of me trying to kiss Wayne last night suddenly flashed in my mind. My straightened back spine lost its courage and bent down. Wayne was obviously angry. He continued to settle the score. "You slept with me and then left without a word?" Then he lowered his gaze, self-mockingly biting his lip. He looked lonely. "I didn't expect you to dislike me so much. To distance yourself from me. You didn't answer my calls or messages. You went to such lengths." I vaguely realized that there might be a misunderstanding. I had no intention of arguing or fighting back. Even my voice softened. "I don't dislike you. I woke up and didn't see you, so I thought you had left. My phone was turned off all the time, and I forgot to turn it on. I didn't intentionally ignore you." He raised an eyebrow, probably not expecting this explanation. He slowly explained to me that he went to buy breakfast for me this morning. He had already sent me a message. It was just that my phone was off and I didn't see it. The misunderstanding was cleared up. Wayne's hand rested on my waist. So, he smiled politely, but there was no trace of humor in his eyes, only a hint of threat. You will take responsibility for me, right? The last word was pronounced very clearly, as if denying it would lead to my demise. I trembled and bravely nodded. Wayne finally let me go. I jumped off the table and was about to go back to the meeting, but the person behind me called me again. He suppressed his smile, gentle and serious. I don't want you to misunderstand that I'm only doing this out of responsibility. So, let me emphasize it. Wayne gazed at me, his eyes as clear as a spring. I like you. It started a long time ago. When I was with Wayne, I always felt a slight awkwardness, especially after he confessed his feelings. But it seemed that I was the only one feeling awkward. Until that moment, when we completely broke through this barrier. I let go completely. Someone reminded us on the school confession wall. Recently, there is a perverted man near the school, who is obese. He loves to expose his private parts to girls on the street. He gets pleasure from their screams and their hasty retreat. As the final exams approached, I was already annoyed with the review. That day, I happened to encounter the weird guy. The quiet street in the evening did not echo with my terrified screams. The weird guy froze, staring at me with a puzzled look. After giving him a glance, I clicked my tongue in annoyance. I started scolding him without reservation. Do you think you have the capital to show off by displaying it on the street? Compared to my boyfriend, it's really delicate and exquisite. No amount of adjectives can describe it. The weird guy became angry and said, "You." I took out my phone and unlocked it, ready to record him. Don't you like showing off? I'll live stream it for you to help promote it. No need to thank me. My other hand was holding a stun baton in my bag. I kept an eye on the weird guy's movements, prepared to shock him if he didn't flee but instead attacked me in anger. I would shock him so much that he wouldn't feel his little chili pepper for the rest of his life. He looked fierce. But suddenly, his gaze froze behind me, and he immediately covered his face or his lower body and ran away. Before I could even feel proud of my righteous act of getting rid of him, I heard slow footsteps behind me. As I turned around, I completely froze in place. When my eyes met Wayne's gaze, I would rather be struck by lightning. Wayne's peach blossom eyes were filled with a very licentious smile at that moment. He was about to speak, but was interrupted by another voice, not far away. May I ask, who is the boyfriend you mentioned? Dean had been standing there for who knows how long. Expressionless yet seemingly calm before the storm. Wayne stood in front of me without a word and looked back at Dean. He smiled lightly. What do you think? Dean stared at him firmly and issued an ultimatum. Wayne, this is none of your business. I am talking to Ethel. In an instant, I suddenly remembered a question that I had overlooked. Why was Dean so sure that nothing had happened between Wayne and me that day? Obviously, Wayne hadn't told him anything. Thinking this way, Dean said it himself. You two didn't leave the bar that night, did you? His hand hanging by his side was already showing bulging veins. You better not tell me that. You did it in a private room at the bar. He sneered, pulling the corners of his mouth down. I assent that just disgusting? I walked out from behind Wayne and questioned him. How did you know that we went to the bar again? Dean, were you following us? His smile turned colder. Do I have so much free time? Then he brought up the small group chat records from the department he was in charge of in the club and placed them in front of us. One of the group members happened to live near that bar and saw Wayne's car when he went home. So he sent it to the group. Seeing the car still in the same spot the next morning, combined with Wayne's image of keeping his distance from girls for the past 3 years, they naturally made their own assumptions. They assumed that Wayne and I had only spent a night at the bar just to fulfill a dare. As for the phone call from Dean during that time, they also assumed that we deliberately called him to provoke him. Dean put away his phone and looked back and forth between the two of us. Finally, his gaze settled on Wayne, and he smiled calmly. Wayne, if you really slept with my girlfriend, I swear I'll kill you. I immediately stood in front of Wayne and looked at him warily. With a cold voice. Dean, don't go crazy. Let me emphasize once again, I broke up with you that night at the bar. Wayne seemed unaffected by the heavy atmosphere. Maintaining his usual composure, he pushed my hand away and walked up to Dean, with a teasing smile and provocative words. It wasn't me who slept with her. She slept with me. The tense string suddenly snapped. Dean cursed and raised his hand, but Wayne pressed it down. Instead, he received a punch from Wayne. It was the first time I saw him so angry. Wayne grabbed his collar and leaned in closer. "What right do you have to question me? If you didn't do those damn things, would she break up with you?" Dean breathed heavily, trying to fight back. But Wayne kicked him hard in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground. He looked down at him with a contemptuous gaze. "I'm puzzled. What makes you so sure that no matter what you do, she won't leave you?" Dean looked at me, who was watching coldly nearby, with deep and complex eyes. I ignored it completely. When Wayne came over, I naturally took his hand and left. I didn't deliberately lower my voice and badmouthed my ex in front of my current boyfriend. He's so weak. After finishing the last class in the evening, I followed Wayne to his apartment outside. Because he had an incredibly cute Siamese cat. When I went there, I had no ulterior motives. But after dinner and watching a movie, Wayne fed me almost half a bottle of fruit wine. When I was slightly tipsy, my courage became unusually bold. Wayne held me on his lap and asked with interest, "So, that night, do you remember anything?" I was fed up with his casual and nonchalant teasing, so I decided to go all in. I blinked innocently and looked at him. "I remember everything, is that not okay?" I pointed to a certain spot on my lower abdomen. "It was up to here at that time." Wayne smiled and lowered his head to bite my lip. "Is that so?" Then he switched to his bragging mode again. "In case you can't remember clearly, let me help you recall." I blushed uncontrollably. My eyes even felt hot. "Don't keep seducing me like this, Wayne." His kisses moved to the side of my neck, and his voice became lower. "Do you like it or not?" I couldn't control my breathing and let out a soft moan. Nervously, I answered, "I like it." The cat was locked in the bedroom by Wayne. The sofa served a purpose it wasn't originally meant for. It endured things it shouldn't have endured. That night, I was forced to say how much I liked it countless times. I woke up in Wayne's arms this time. I turned around in his embrace and faced him, remembering the time we spent together, his subtle influence on me. Wayne is really good at flirting. If he wanted to, he could be even more promiscuous than Dean and play around even more. But he said, he only likes me. Lost in thought, I was startled when Wayne woke up. Our eyes met unexpectedly, and I was slow to react. The progress bar labeled like Wayne had already loaded more than half without me realizing it. Wayne squinted his eyes and tightened his arms around me, pulling me into his embrace. He rubbed his face against my neck. With a sleepy voice, he murmured, "I love you. Ethel, I love you." I pressed the lower half of my face against his neck. It was even more intimate than when we were passionately entangled, making me blush. I softly replied, "I know." Wayne paused for an imperceptible moment while holding me. Then he quickly returned to normal. "Yeah, he didn't ask me anything." Since the night at the bar, Carol has been glowing with joy. She looked like she was deeply in love. But one day, while Wayne and I were leaving the school, we ran into her just after she had been crying. She stopped us and hesitantly asked, "Wayne, are you with Ethel now?" Wayne smiled politely and asked, "What's it to you?" Carol forced a smile and said, "I just wanted to remind you that you probably don't know what kind of person Ethel really is. Don't be deceived by her." "Shut up." Wayne interrupted her, maintaining a hint of politeness. "Compared to Ethel, I do know you better." Carol couldn't believe it and asked, "Wayne, are you saying?" Wayne looked at her thoughtfully. "The mistress? The interloper?" He politely inquired, "How would you like me to address you?" Carol's face turned pale and then red. In the end, the troublemaker left, suppressing her anger. We were relieved. That night, as a reward for Wayne, I decided to take the initiative instead of being passive. Soon, I realized that lying down was the most effortless. I didn't really care about Carol, but I didn't expect her to openly accuse me of two-timing in the school's online community and gain a lot of attention. Moreover, the post was presented in the form of a video. The girl had red eyes and a haggard face. Not an accusation, just want to use public opinion to make Ethel realize the seriousness of the problem and stop ruining my relationship with my boyfriend. The entire video described how I was involved with Wayne while still having feelings for Dean. It also mentioned how Carol and Dean's relationship fell apart and he broke up with her. Yes, She didn't mention her own interference in my relationship with Dean. I closed my eyes, feeling a surge of anger and frustration. After hesitating for a while, I finally clicked on the comment section. I was prepared to be bombarded with insults. However, oh my, the mistress is crying for justice. You think you can blur out the fact that you got involved with Dean? Even if I hadn't seen that post, I wouldn't believe you. Ever since I found out that Ethel single-handedly subdued a perverted man, I became her fan unconditionally. Just finished reading that post, came here just to insult you, shameless mistress. Oh, by the way, to prevent that scumbag from hiding, I'll insult both of you together, scumbag couple. That post? I continued scrolling down the comments, and many people mentioned another post. After about half a minute, I finally found the link to that post. I clicked on it and was once again shocked. It was posted by Wayne. It was a narrative of over 3,000 words with a few pictures. Not only did it clarify with evidence that Dean was relentlessly pursuing me, but it also exposed the fact that Carol was the mistress. And most importantly, just 2 minutes after Carol posted the accusing video about me, Wayne quickly posted a clarification. I immediately called Wayne. How did you guess that Carol would slander me and prepare this evidence in advance? He chuckled lightly. I just based it on her nature and took precautions. I couldn't help but smile at his response, but I pretended to be reserved. It's not necessary to prepare in advance. The truth won't be buried. In the end, Carol will definitely end up shooting herself in the foot. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. But I don't want to give them a chance to criticize you. My brain buzzed. I finally understood his intention. Only by clarifying the situation as soon as possible could I avoid being misunderstood and becoming a target of online attacks. Fireworks exploded in my mind, scattering my rationality. Only my affection for him remained. After hanging up the phone, I rushed to the club meeting room to find Wayne. When I arrived, unexpectedly, I heard the voice of Dean from behind the door. "Wayne, you're so afraid of me," Dean said. Wayne indulged him as if he were playing with a fool. "Whatever you say goes. I saw the clarification tweet you posted." Dean didn't pay attention to his perfunctory response. Instead, he became more interested. "You posted it so quickly. Obviously, you had prepared the evidence long ago. But why?" Dean chuckled lightly. "Because you're afraid of me clarifying things." Through a narrow glass window, I saw Wayne drop his electronic pen to the ground. Silence. Dean's expression became even more arrogant. "You're afraid of me clarifying things, stealing your glory, and then Ethel, moved by it all, will come back to me. If I'm not mistaken, Ethel has never said she likes you, has she?" Wayne snapped back to reality and picked up his pen. His face showed no emotion. "Are you done talking? The door is over there, leave now." Dean acted as if he hadn't heard and spoke with a tone that seemed both sentimental and boastful. "I understand her better than you. She can't fall for you so quickly. Even if she's with you, it's only because you two slept together. It's meaningless to force it. Wayne, let Ethel go." This scumbag. I found a basin in the adjacent storage room and filled it with water from the bathroom before pushing the door open. "Ethel." Dean's arrogant expression disappeared, and he nervously called my name. Instead of immediately looking at Wayne, I placed the basin of water in front of Dean. Dean looked down at the basin. He showed a hint of surprise in his eyes and brows. "You." I interrupted him, "Look down." Dean complied. "Did you see clearly?" Suddenly, I let go. The basin fell to the ground. Dean couldn't dodge in time and got his pants wet. "I thought your family couldn't afford a mirror, so I kindly brought a basin of water for you to see your true self," I said, attacking him relentlessly. "Why is it impossible for me to fall for Wayne so quickly? Are you saying I have to wait a year before I can like someone else? He's better looking than you, more devoted than you, and better than you in every way." Dean pressed his lips tightly and looked at me with a dark gaze. "Just because of that 3-minute kiss, you immediately abandoned me. Is that fair to me?" I took a deep breath to calm myself. I gave Dean a fake smile and said, "If you feel that you've been treated unfairly, you can sue me." Dean stubbornly continued to stare at me, as if he still wanted to say something. I quickly grabbed Wayne, who had been silent for a while, and left. The quiet lakeside was deserted, and the cloudy weather made today more restless than usual. I looked serious, silent in front of Wayne. I was torn between explaining to him first or confessing my feelings first. But I heard his apology first. The reason behind my tweet was partly out of fear that you would reconcile with Dean. But the original intention was to protect you from public criticism. I sighed. Holding his face, our eyes met. Wayne, you don't have to be so cautious. Even if that was one of the reasons, you don't need to apologize. Because I like you, and this only makes me find you adorable. He paused. After a few seconds, he chuckled softly. Surprisingly, it happened half a year earlier. I responded with a sound of agreement. What do you mean half a year? Wayne looked at the artificial lake, his gaze distant. I was prepared for you to fall in love with me half a year later. Of course, I also considered that you might never fall in love with me. But I've always been optimistic. I think that as long as I treat you well, better than anyone else, at least you won't fall for someone else. He said softly, maybe you would be willing to continue being with me. Wayne, who is always hailed as a prodigy, could actually say these humble words calmly without changing his expression. My sadness outweighed my touched emotions. I buried myself in his arms and sobbed softly. Wayne, are you a hopeless romantic? He hugged me back, gently rubbing the back of my head, his voice lazy. I'm only a hopeless romantic for you. I hugged him tighter, correcting him with a slight nasal tone. No, you can't. You should put yourself first and not lose yourself. Wayne's tone slightly raised, and he chuckled. That's impossible, he said with self-mockery. If I could control that, I would have stopped liking you a long time ago. Just like before, he knew that Ethel had a boyfriend, and his unrequited love for Ethel was destined to end in vain, yet he still struggled with his feelings for her. But he was lucky. On that night of the adventure game, when he heard Ethel tell Dean, if you dare to kiss her, we're breaking up. That moment, no one knew how much his hand trembled when he heard it. That moment marked the beginning of his dream come true, as his unrequited love for Ethel was finally reciprocated.